Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're focusing in a little bit more in depth on emotional manipulation from the toxic people, the psychopath, the narcissistic individuals who present with a character disorder, who create a real imbalance in relationships, who have a heightened sense of self-superiority and coupled with a lack of empathy means that they just don't see things from your perspective. They just don't embrace others' values. They just don't embrace other people's opinions. They just really don't care about others. They have really an inflated sense of self-importance, self-superiority, and oftentimes will get where they need to go or get what they want out of life at others' expense. So at the degradation of others, at the hurting and exploiting of others, and really what we call emotional manipulation. And that is when they use different ploys, tactics to basically control the end of the relationship, which you should be participating in. No one should be able to have that much control or mastery over you. But the narcissist and the psychopath really covertly engage in emotional manipulation tactics that are designed to keep you behaving in ways that will further their interests and keep you separate from your own interests and really living your life purpose, living your on your own sort of terms, your morals, your sense of direction. And the emotional manipulation oftentimes begins in the it commences in the beginning of the relationship during the love bombing phase, when you violate your boundaries, or oftentimes you go against your own sense of integrity, your own morals, your own sense of right or wrong, in order to sacrifice or further put this other individual up on a pedestal while you kind of remain as a support figure. And a lot of people don't realize that this is occurring when they first enter into the relationship. They didn't realize that they were engaging in this sort of self-sabotaging or self-degradation in the relationship, but it becomes more pronounced with time. It becomes more evident, and it becomes more clear to the spirit. It becomes more clear to the heart. It becomes more clear to the individual that this is part of the dynamic that is going on. So it becomes much more clear as you really remove the fog, you remove the fear, you remove the guilt, you remove the obligation that had permeated much of the relationship. And you realize that that's not the foundation of love. The foundation of love is something much more unconditional. Love should be experienced as somebody accepting you for who you are, embracing you, and really being able to be humble enough to accept people with all their imperfections, or with just really who they are in their humanity. In fact, oftentimes it's people's imperfections that make them so attractive. I mean, think of Pretty Woman. Someone who has a lot of flaws, Sidney Crawford, it's, what is it, her birthmark that makes her attractive. Or it's called a beauty mark, but it's really an imperfection. So the person who really loves you is going to love you for who you are, with all of your quirks, with all of your idiosyncrasies, is going to love you for the very character that you are, and is not going to try to squelch you, cramp your style, or insult you for furthering your life and living your purpose. They're going to be supportive, nurturing, and basically energetic or excited for that. And yes, a lot of that does need to come from within you. Your own motivation, your drive, your passion should be at the seat of your life. It should be at the foundation of your life. And it should not have to be cut off in order to support or keep happy a emotional abusive individual, which in essence becomes narcissistic or psychopathic. So I want to focus in a little bit more in terms of that relationship and the emotional manipulation or feeling of being emotionally manipulated for someone else's ends versus what is really in your true best interest. And I have found that you constantly feel like you have to give in to this other person. So if you feel like you have to constantly give in, you're sacrificing yourself and what you need, what you want, your voice. And in the beginning, there's when there's a give and take of a relationship, of course, but you feel when the whole relationship feels like you have to constantly give in to them. You have to constantly take care of this individual or be a support for their narcissistic needs. You're not allowed to speak up. You're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to have any sort of empowered role in the relationship, but you constantly have to give in. In essence, it's like this person is mastering you rather than you being able to master yourself. And a lot of people don't really awaken to this until certain stages of their life, or the pain is great enough, or they feel, they've reached a certain part in their life when they realize that something is just not right. So we need to fix something here. This is off. This is not good for me. This is not good for you. Things are becoming hostile. Things are becoming negative. One is suspicious of the other. So it becomes really, there's some triggers that then make it so uncomfortable that something has to change, something has to give, something has to adapt. And if you have adapted way too long to this individual, meaning you have made too many personal sacrifices, you've taken too many slugs in the gut, you have taken too many insults, for your own good, and it's just basically like you're, a silenced, mute, and dumb for this individual just to be there to take care of them or make their dinner or clean their house or provide them a place to live or take them out to eat. I mean, if you have to be constantly in that support role and it's never ever about you, what you want, your contribution, your input, and you're invalidated, then it's a real sign that you're in a emotionally manipulative individual with a narcissist or psychopathic individual. You really do need to look to yourself for direction at that point. You have to say enough is enough. You have to be able to make the decision really for yourself that this is becoming unhealthy. And you need to be able to speak up as such and do this without fear. Also realize that emotional manipulation is also what I would call conditional love. So it's based on a lot of ifs. It's based on a lot of contingencies. It's based on a lot of specifics which you feel you have to constantly control. And if you have to, if there's too much control in the relationship, there's going to be a lot of back and forth. There's going to be a lot of bickering. It's just not very productive. It's not very, it's not a good rut to get stuck in. And I find that a lot of covert and overt narcissistic relationships, as well as definitely those that are plagued by psychopathic relationships, they get caught in a lot of this conditional relationship. The relationship just can't be. There's a lot of conditions that have to be met. You have to be supportive of them. You have to be so sacrificial of your own self, your time, in order to support them and keep them happy, that it becomes imbalanced. The whole relationship goes haywire. And you feel like you constantly have to appease them. This feeling of appeasing means you constantly, of course, I mean, a lot of relationships, and I always give this like disclaimer, like in healthy relationships, of course, you might love to please this person. You might love to make them dinner, keep a house clean, do their laundry, drive for them, pick up little gifts, write little love notes. I mean, this is all good, all well and good when it's back and forth. When there's a give and take between the two, when there's an enjoyment from both sides. These are the trademarks of a healthy relationship. And it's not out of whack, it's not out of balance, that things aren't going haywire. But when it's constantly, you have to take care of another's ego needs. You have to constantly fluff up their ego. You're not allowed to have your own input. They're constantly devaluing you in their subtle ways. Realize that this is going to etch away at your confidence, and realize that confidence comes from the root word confidare, which means to trust. And you have to be able to be in touch with your own sense of self-trust, which is, basically you understand the give and take and you don't distrust this other individual. Oftentimes, we find that in the narcissist and psychopathic relationships, they're plagued with pathological lying and a lot of secrecy, and this violates trust. So you have to have trust in a relationship. If you do not have trust, you do not have anything. You have distrust, you have disharmony, and that leads to unhappiness, and unhappiness leads to a miserable life. And no one signs up for a miserable life. It's just, especially in the relationship of choice, your partner, your mate, you can't afford emotionally to be caught in this bantering, this emotional control, emotional manipulation. So, you have to realize that it's time to look to yourself and take, a time to ask yourself these tough questions and evaluate where the relationship is. And if it's constantly trying to appease somebody else, and you find like that you're just unhappy, miserable, feeling like they constantly have control over you, and you feel like you're just like a psychological hostage, then it's time to realize that this is a plagued relationship. It's just plagued. It's sabotaged. There's emotional manipulation from this individual. They're too much trying to control other people. And there are individuals who thrive on taking control over others. But if you realize that if another is trying to control you, you are not permitted to be in control of yourself. And end of the day, you have to be the one who's accountable to yourself and be the master of your own destiny, your own emotions, your own feelings, and your own health. You have to be able to be clear about that in order to have a happy, fulfilling life moving forward. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.